many years ago, when I was talking about government and ICT, I used to say that, when they keep on telling you that 50% of your population is living at less than $1 or $2 a day, you basically have only two ways of resolving that issue. One is by some miracle, you do something that suddenly leads to those people now earning $100 a day. And you and I both know that's not a simple thing to do. The other thing you could do is to help them keep that $1 in their pockets. So you cannot ask somebody from Isiolo to take that $1 they have to pay bus fare to come to Nairobi to look at some land records. You have government and its services. You then have citizens and the expectations of those services. And what is really transforming is what's in between. It used to be the Juakali manual, walk there kind of thing. Now it's kind of changing with applications that are being developed or taking advantage of some of the digitized content so that people can consume them. And there's the infrastructure that's being invested in by government and other people. If I could just hear from each of you, please, 3 minutes, no more, your highlight in terms of a successful implementation or use of ICT in a manner that has delivered impactful service to citizens.
At last year's Connected, there was the launch of ICT Master Plan, and it had several key pillars or themes, including infrastructure, infrastructure, e-government services, capacity building, and things like that. So some of the key projects I think which have been very, very successful is, for example, Huduma. What we've been able to do as the government is to extend applications and services from where they used to sit in their parent ministries or departments and put them in one physical location. And that physical location is actually the post offices. And I think it was very brilliant because we have about 600 post offices across the country. So in terms of their location, they're quite ideal. So we have now probably about 40 Huduma centers, and people are able to walk in there and access government services from one single location. In the connectivity area, we've been able to extend what we call the Government Common Core Network. The Government Common Core Network actually connects all the major government buildings within the CBD. And if you realize, most of the government offices, ministries, departments, and agencies are located either within CBD or Upper Hill. So basically, we've been able to do a redundant ring to be able to connect those government offices. In terms of applications, I believe you're also aware of IFMIS, which is an integrated financial management system. And one of the other things we're doing to enable the counties to use IFMIS from a connectivity point of view is the county connectivity project that we are actually doing there. Lastly, I want to talk about another key thing, which is within my docket, and this is security. We cannot have the connectivity and the applications without security. So one of the things that we recently did is the introduction of public key infrastructure. And we're now beginning to integrate that into various government applications. We recently helped KRA integrate PKI into iTax. So with PKI, you actually have a dongle and you log onto the system, and that has a secure password. So every transaction is actually digitally signed, so you can actually not disown that particular transaction.
I would begin from 2007, when we came up with a very simple five policy statement. The first one was we deal with infrastructure. The second, we encourage application content. The third, public-private partnership, capacity building, the fourth. And I would say that strategic plan that we had indeed worked because we leveraged on the public-private partnerships to build the infrastructure, especially the key infrastructure that has changed the region, which is the undersea cables. I recall when we started working on the undersea cable, 10 anti-corruption officials came to my office and told me do you think Kenyans are fools that you can lay a wire from Middle East to Mombasa? You think we are fools? And I said, yes, I actually plan to do exactly that. So they assisted me work. Every evening they would come, 10 of them, very intimidating police officers. But eventually we finished. And even as we launched the cable with the president and the prime minister, one of them was whispering, tunajua hii mulitoa hapo tu chini. It's not working. We need to move more in the area of digitization, because this is how we can improve the service delivery. Still, you see on TV, very old women. I saw one from Kirinyaga following up their title. I think everybody saw that. That should not happen. They should actually send an SMS and know whether the title is ready, such that they would just come for the title and not to come and go back physically from the Ministry of Lands. Applications have done so much to this country, beginning from M-Pesa, moving on to M-Farms, M-Shambas, iCows. We need to encourage this, because this is the services the citizens want. And once the system, you said you want them to keep their dollar, this is how they can keep their dollar and increase the dollars.
In 2007, I happened to go to Seoul, South Korea, through the sponsorship of the East African community. And I was able to see what the government in Seoul is doing with ICT. So came back with a lot of enthusiasm. They came after that and they did a feasibility study for Nairobi City Council then on how we can also start moving forward in e-government. When I presented the document to the then town clerk, and I asked him to fund some of the recommendations there, he asked how much it costs. When he had the cost, he said, why should I spend so much on something that nobody's seeing? I'd rather spend money on manure and buy some seedlings than invest in ICT. After thinking, we decided to approach the ICT authority. If they could even fund for us the core recommendation, which was an ERP, they agreed. And we started a journey then. And then when the new government came, they said they cannot implement strategies which were 2-3 years old. So we did a new roadmap, which we are currently implementing with ICTA. So we have what is called an integrated county revenue management system that we are going to be implementing through ICTA. It's still under the process of procurement. We have done the e-payment, which we are still doing. So far we have done 8 streams of electronic payment that citizens can be able to pay for services electronically. Before we started the implementation in July, they were able to collect around 60 million Kenya shillings every month. Currently, by the end of January, they were collecting over 100 million.
So Henry, you've heard what these Kenyans have already done beyond the beautiful building across the Nile. What's happening?
Whatever you can do in Kenya, you do it in Uganda, you do in Rwanda, you may do it in South Sudan. South Sudan officially has achieved success in digitizing our nationality certificates. My comrade Major Deng was here. He was instrumental in realizing this. Just as early as last week, 2 weeks, a few days ago, my honorable minister and His Excellency the President were able to have a groundbreaking ceremony. We hope to connect the Juba metropolitan area with the fiber optics. And at the same time, we intend to extend it to tap into the sea cables, be it through Uganda and through Kenya.
Jerry,
Yeah.
by now, are you picking up on issues of legal that those who care about law here should pay attention to?
Yeah, I won't focus on the legal, but what I will say is I think one theme that is coming across is is the fact that the PPP, I think the fact that we have to work together. And I think there's the notion that's often quoted, I think it's an African quote about going far alone, but going fast alone and going far together. And I think it's becoming apparent that we can't do things on our own if we want to actually accomplish a lot.
Kaburo's already flagged me, so what I'll do is I will allow the floor. Kaburu, how much time do you have? 15, huh? So allow the floor 15 minutes, because I'm sure there's things you may have heard that may have prompted some thinking, or anything you want to express or you want to explore. We have 15 minutes to do so.
I started computer studies in a hospital in London, and I really want to thank the panelists. I want to thank the government, and especially Dr. Ndemo. He's really worked with me. And as they were talking, I could really understand you, madam. When I came back to Kenya, to remove the mainframe from an office, to bring the new systems was very hard. I was fought, but I stood hard. Today, as I was listening to her about the Nairobi County, I want to congratulate you. But I want you to put your foot down. Let them know we must accept change. In the ICT world, there is no two way. You must be full of integrity. You must be honest. And when you start to do something, you'll never, never go back.
Robert, if you can just touch very quickly on the issue of lack of transparency and the looking down at county governments and things like that. Daktari, if you can just talk about the transition and the consistency of leadership at that level. And Jerry, I know you've already said this. Perhaps if you have additional comments you want to make in terms of resolving the legal type bottlenecks.
They've been very good plans, but there's been a problem of execution. And I think one of the biggest issues we've had is a lack of a clear roadmap in terms of what needs to be done and by whom. And therefore, that's why you find sometimes things are done centrally in Nairobi, and there's not full involvement of the people sitting in the counties. For those of you in the private sector, you know this government has been doing a lot of digital initiatives. And it's been exciting times for everybody. However, there has not been structure and coordination. So one of the biggest challenges that we've had is that everybody is doing a project, but it's a silo. So one of the things that will happen with the GEA and the standards that we're working on is to actually break down those silos and say, for example, IPRS is domiciled in the Ministry of Interior. They are the ones who have the legal mandate to do this. However, this system will be used by many other people. Therefore, let's leave the Ministry of Interior to be the lead agency in terms of driving the agenda for IPRS, and then everybody else is coming to support. So if you have a data store or an application that needs to integrate into IPRS, then you also participate in that. So in terms of transparency and all of this, I think with the work we're doing in terms of standards, architecture, and guidelines, that will be able to address that.
When we created the ICT board, was to create a faster execution process, and we tried. Then we thought we should get into PPPs so that if we get a good idea, because in ICT, actually government doesn't need to pay for most of the services. We had put together, for example, lands where the PPP would bring the resources and they would do the job. It didn't need money from government. And I pray that this current initiative on anti-corruption reveals the true tenderpreneurs. There are serious guys there who play games and the things go their way. You can find an idea which nobody has thought about and comes and says we can do a PPP and execute this. And you say, right. When you go back, you are told, no, it must be tendered. Which means I must reveal the entire idea that came from Macharia to people who didn't know about it, and I know he's the one who can execute it. And because this one has a super tenderpreneur from the behind, gets it, and comes to ask me, who did you say who can do it? This is what's happening. This is what is happening. And it must be said that we have super wheeler dealers behind. And if you go against, actually you are the one who gets into trouble. Until we free up these corruption issues and get the real people who can execute, the real people who come up with the ideas, and even in tender processes, it is not the lowest winner who can execute. Some people put the lower price because they don't understand what they're supposed to do.
We know that we have the technological know-how to institute systems which can fight corruption in our procurement processes. In South Sudan, I'm aware that we have a financial information system in the Ministry of Finance, but closely related to that is a procurement system which can also equally be installed. It can be done, and we know it can be done. Do we have it in place? Or must we always wait for our commander-in-chief to tell us to step aside? I don't think it should be like that. But again, we can also fight corruption using our fourth arm of the state, the robust media. I know Kenya, you have a good one. And that can help stem out issues of corruption.
In many cases, we see that the law seems to stand in the way of what we think is the objective of the people, or, but I think political will is a big part of that. So we talked about the corruption, but we have people here, the legislators, if they have the political will to, change the laws. We talked about the procurement laws. Do the procurement laws work for us as, as citizens, and what changes may be required there? And I think even to what Forrest was talking about, as even the private sector, we all have a part. Even are there more creative ways in which we as private sector constituents can do more to, for the citizens?
Many of us in the counties, we feel quite restricted by the issue of IFMIS, the way it's being handled. Because, we understand what the national government wants is to have a view of what is going on in the county. And the county government is not opposed to that. But the way it's being put to us is that you have to use this particular system that is being used by the government. And it's like in the counties, nobody knows anything, so we have to wait for the central government to decide. All we are asking for is that let us implement systems the way we know how, because we interact with other cities and we know what is required in the city. The only condition should be that whatever system that we implement should be able to integrate to IFMIS. But we should not be restricted that this is what we find ourselves,
We're in the right direction. We need to accelerate things. We need to be ruthless with self-centered individuals. We need to focus on things that are benefiting citizens. We need to share, and we need to learn from each other. So I'll leave it at that particular point. Thank you very much for your time.